So this video is in response to a specific request that I got from, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Kamara? Let's see, what other, I'm sure there are lots of different variations. Your name probably gets mispronounced a lot, but I feel your pain. Muriel often gets mispronounced too. So anyways, let's get into the question. Okay, so this is from Prep Test 64, Game 2, and it's question 8. So I'm going to start with setting up and going through the rules and everything so that we're on the same page there. So we've got three countries, okay, V, Y, and Z. So these are going to be our groups, okay, and then we're assigning players to those groups, and our options for players are J, K, L, N, and O. So we have 5 players and only 3 groups, so we have more players than positions potentially, but we'll see how many positions we have in each group. We have 1 ambassador per country, so that means that we have 1 player per group. No ambassador will be assigned to more than 1 country, so that means that we've got 3 in and 2 out. Okay, so either K or N, but not both, is assigned to one of the ambassadorships. So K or N, not both. Okay, so what that tells me is that one of them is in and the other one is out. Okay, so one of them will be out for sure, and the other one is going to be somewhere in here. Okay, and then we have some, this could be a conditional rule, right? So we could think of this as a biconditional where they're never together. Okay, where if we know N's position, we know K is out. If we know K is out, we also know N is in. So that's the biconditional part, right? Goes both ways. And then if K is in, then N is out. But if N is out, K has to be in. All right, so we have the or and the not both, which gives us a biconditional. So or on its own takes the format of if A is out, then B is in. If B is out, then A is in. Okay, that's the or part. And then the not both part is that if A is in, B is out, and if B is in, A is out. Okay, that's the not both part. So when we combine those two things together, we can see that this guy up here, the reverse is down here, so we can just create a double arrow there, and same with these guys, right? So not B means A, but also A means not B, so we can just have a double arrow there, right? Once we know it's or and not both, right? Then we can do the biconditional. So that's just a little aside on how biconditionals work and this particular one. So that's rule 1. Rule 2, if J is in, okay, so if J is assigned to one of these, then K is as well. And if K is not, then J is not. Right, that's our contrapositive. And if K isn't, then we know N is. But we also know that J isn't, which means everybody else is. So if K is out, J is out, and N, O, and L all have to be assigned. Okay. All right. 3. If O is assigned to V, okay, so if O is under V, then K is not going to be under Y, so K won't be in group Y. I'm going to cross that out. So if K is in group Y, that means that V is not in group O. O is not in group V, so that would be, V is the group, O is the player. So that's the contrapositive. All right, so hopefully that Makes sense. The wild card in this one, the player that is not mentioned in any of the rules, is L. Okay. And something to note is that if O is assigned to V, then yeah, K can't be assigned to Y, but that doesn't mean that it's out, right? So it could be assigned to Z or it could be out altogether. All right, and I say Z because I'm Canadian. I don't know if you're Canadian, but I say Z instead of Z. Yeah, so hopefully that's not too confusing. All right, so that's it for the setup. There really isn't much more that I would be dealing with here, not much more that I would write down at this point. I did kind of make some deductions in my head, like in terms of if the contrapositive is triggered for rule 2, you know, that if K is out, then J is out, then everybody else is in. Yeah, but other than that, I'd be ready to move on to the questions at this point. All right, and we're specifically dealing with question 8. Okay, question 8. So the pair of candidates who are not assigned to ambassadorships could be which ones? All right, so we're looking at what could be this pair. So one thing that I know for sure is that that pair has to include exactly one of this pair. That makes sense. So I need to have K or N, and I can't have both of them out. So exactly one of those two has to be out. So let's look at our options here. So J and O can't both be out because then K and N would be in together. That's not allowed. K and L, at this point we don't know, but that one seems fine. K and N both out, that's not allowed. Okay, one or the other of them does have to be in, right? So either K or N is assigned. So D, sorry, I should be eliminating D there. All right, so this one has K and N both out, that's not allowed. This one has J and O both out, but then that would mean that K and N are both in, so that's not allowed either. And then E has L and O out, but then both K and N would be in. So based on rule 1, we can eliminate B, D, and E. Okay, so none of those things are possible. Those would all break rule 1. So now we've got it down between A and C. And so at this point, I would probably test it. This is a could be true question, right? So they're asking us what could happen, what's possible. So might as well test it, see if I can make a scenario that works. So for A, let's put J and N out and see what that triggers. So we've got V, Y, and Z. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and put J and N out and test that out. So if J and N are out, that means K is in, O is in, and L is in. Okay, so I do have to be still concerned about rule 3, right? I can check to see if I'm following the other rules, right? So N is out, N is out and K is in, right? Following rule 1, that's fine. Rule 2 says that if J is in, which it's not, then K would be in. All right, well, I can ignore this rule because it's not triggered, right? J is out and K is in. So it's possible that these two consequences coexist, right? Rule 2 actually isn't triggered by this scenario at all. Okay, so this rule doesn't mean that J and K are always together, right? It's only triggered if J is in or K is out. And we don't have that in this scenario. So that's a fairly common mistake, right? So one of the reasons that we create the contrapositive by flipping and negating is because that's the only logical deduction that we can make from a conditional statement, right? So we can't say that just because J is out, K is out. So what that would be is that would be negating this statement without flipping it. And that's actually an error. Okay, so that's something that we would call a mistaken negation. And then the other mistake that you can make in trying to make a deduction based on a conditional statement is to flip it without negating or reverse it without negating. So that would be saying that just because K is in, J also has to be in, which isn't true. All right, that's why I draw an arrow here, because the rule goes in this direction. This is the trigger and this is the consequence. So this right here is a mistaken reversal. So that's, we've reversed it or flipped it without negating. So you have to do both the reverse and the negation in order to get the contrapositive. And then this one here we can rely on, and that's actually a true, valid inference that we can take from the original statement. Okay, so we have to follow the formula, and then we have to make sure that we are looking for those triggers before we follow the consequences. So these guys are mistakes. Okay, so these would be false assumptions to rely on in this case, right? That's not necessarily true. So just because J is out doesn't actually tell us anything, and just because K is in, that also doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't actually lead to anything. Okay. All right, so with this one, the only thing we now need to be concerned about is making sure that if O is with V, that we don't put K with Y. So K would then go with Z and L could go with Y. So that would be one potential acceptable solution. So I'll just demonstrate that now. So if we intentionally trigger Rule 3, then we have to follow the consequence. So we can't put K there, but no problem. We can just put K with Z, and then L is left over, and we put L with Y. Bam, that's an acceptable solution. So A definitely could be true. I don't even have to check C at this point because I trust my process here, right? I know that A is possible, so A's definitely got to be the right answer. But for the sake of practice, right, for the sake of learning, I'm going to go through why C doesn't work. Okay, so we've got V, Y, and Z. All right, and then we have our two out positions, and for this one we're going to test having K and L out. So if K is out, I already see what the problem is. If K is out, that triggers Rule 2. Right, so K being out, that's what's represented when I say, K is crossed out. So that should mean that J is also out, but that's not going to work because then we're not going to have enough players to fill the positions in here, right? And we know that one ambassador will be assigned to each country, right? We do actually know that we have to fill up those spots, and then we're not going to be able to if J is also out. Yeah. Okay, so we can eliminate C, and A is the correct answer. So hopefully that helps. If you have any other questions, definitely feel free to ask, let me know, and I'll do my best to get a video up for you as fast as I can. All right, have a good night.